You ever wondered why two people can get the exact same injury but have completely different recoveries? I mean, one person's back at it in a few weeks, and the other is still on the sidelines months later. It's a puzzle, right?
Yeah. So why is it so all over the place? This is probably one of the most maddening parts of getting hurt. You're left kind of scratching your head, wondering, am I doing something wrong here? And it doesn't help that the advice we get is, well, a total mess. You've got one person telling you to stop everything and rest completely, then the next person says, no, you gotta push through it. So which one is it?
But what if we're all looking in the wrong place? What if the real key to unlocking better, more consistent healing isn't about those extremes? What if it's hiding in something we barely even think about? The actual, specific words we use to guide our own movements.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. There's this powerful new model called the Integrative Clinical Framework, and what it does is pretty amazing. It pulls together three things that seem separate but are totally connected: physical force, your body's overall capacity, and even your own personal beliefs about your injury.
So let's break this down. We're going to explore the three core pillars of this thing. First, how we can literally manipulate force with our words. Second, a cool concept called the envelope model. And third, a decision-making tool that works like a GPS, known as the quadrant system.
All right, first up, force manipulation. Get this. The core idea here is that simple words, simple verbal cues act like a volume dial for your body's movements. The words you pick literally change the physics of how you move.
So for example, take a simple phrase like this one. In the framework, this is called an absorb cue, and its job is super specific: turn down the impact. So what's actually happening here? Well, when you tell yourself to land soft and slow, you naturally increase the amount of time your foot stays on the ground. You can see it right here with that high ground contact time bar. That extra time on the ground is everything. It acts like a shock absorber, spreading out the force, which means that peak force on your body drops way, way down. So the big takeaway here? This is your go-to strategy when you need to be gentle. You're literally using language to create a protective buffer for tissue that's trying to heal.
Okay, now let's crank that volume dial all the way up. The attack cue. I mean, the words themselves just sound powerful, right? And that's exactly the kind of movement they create.
And just look at the mechanics. It's the mirror image of what we just saw. When you attack, your time on the ground becomes super short, as you can see by that low contact time bar. There's no time to absorb anything. All that force gets concentrated into one explosive moment, which creates a huge peak force.
And this is for the home stretch of recovery. The goal isn't protection anymore. It's about building power and performance so an athlete can get back in the game and do it safely.
So we've got this volume dial for force, but what tells us how high to turn it? Well, that brings us to pillar number 2, the envelope model. And this is a game changer because it recognizes that your ability to handle a load isn't just about your injury, it's about your entire life. So what's an envelope? Think of it as your personal safety bubble. It's the boundary, the limit of what your body can handle right now without getting overloaded or re-injured.
But here's the really crucial part. You don't just have one envelope, you have two. First, there's the tissue envelope. That's local. It's all about the sprained ankle itself, the inflammation, its history. But then you have the system envelope, and that's global. It's affected by everything else: your stress at work, how well you slept, all the demands of your life. So someone's knee might be physically healed, but if they're super stressed and not sleeping, their system envelope is tiny, and that knee just can't handle much.
Okay, so you know about force cues and you get the two envelopes. How in the world do you put all that information together to make the right call? Well, that brings us to our third pillar, the quadrant system. Seriously, think of this as a GPS for healing. It maps what the body needs against what the person believes. Let's quickly look at this map. On the rows, you've got what the tissue needs. Does it need protection, or is it ready for more load, for exposure? And on the columns, you have the person's mindset. Are we going to validate their beliefs about their injury, or do we need to challenge or violate that belief? So for instance, if the tissue is fragile and the person is scared, you protect and validate. Easy. But what if the tissue is fragile and the person wants to push through it? Then you have to protect and violate. Challenge that belief to keep them safe. It's a really smart way to tailor the approach.
All right, this is the moment where it all clicks into place. Let's take the force cues, the envelopes, and that quadrant GPS and see how they combine to create these incredible, personalized roadmaps back to health.
Now, it all works based on a few ground rules. Your envelopes, both what your tissue can handle and what your life can handle, tell you which force cues to use. The person's coping style gives you a good hint about which path they'll take. And this is so important. None of this is set in stone. The quadrants are dynamic. The whole plan changes as you heal.
So let's imagine an endurance coper. You know this person, the one whose motto is no pain, no gain. For them, you'd start in that protect and violate quadrant. You have to step in and challenge their belief that they need to push harder, while using those absorb cues, like land soft, to physically protect them from themselves. Then, over time, as they heal and learn, you can guide them all the way over to expose and attack.
Now what about the opposite, the avoidance scoper, who's terrified of making things worse? Here, their tissue might actually be ready for more, but fear has shrunk their system envelope to almost nothing. So you start by validating that fear. You stay in the expose and validate box using gentle absorb cues to build trust. And only as their confidence grows do you start to gently challenge that fear and move them towards those more powerful attack cues.
And this really gets to the heart of it all. What this framework shows us is that our words are not just fluff. They're not just cheap encouragement. When you use the right words at the right time, language becomes one of the most precise, most powerful healing tools we have.
So the big takeaway from all this is that real healing is a holistic science. It isn't just about fixing the sprained ankle. It's about treating the actual tissue, yes, but also acknowledging the stress of a person's life and helping them rewrite the story they're telling themselves about what their body is capable of.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about, whether we're injured or not. The next time you go for a run, or lift a box, or even just get up from your chair, what words are you going to choose to guide that movement?